Arlington Redevelopment Board. First on our agenda tonight is public hearing for EDR special permit docket number 3531 regarding 887 Mass Ave. Public hearing is now open. I would ask the proponent and their representatives to come forward to the table. Introduce yourselves, please.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Robert Anesi, and I represent the petitioners. Attorney Deborah Knowles, seated to my left, John Carney, seated to her left, Michael Avani is the architect, seated way over to the left. We're here for a mixed-use development, okay? And we're here about a site in town that, quite frankly, I went to high school here many more years than I care to remember at this point. And the site has never been a viable site. It's been a terrible site. It's a gas station for many years, never been developed. And indeed, in the last year or two, I've represented developers who wanted to get involved in developing the site, but walked away. And they walked away because they could not see their way clear to doing something economically viable to make it happen for them. We now have developers who are prepared to spend the money to develop the site, and basically they live in town as well. They're not absentee folks here. Okay? They reside in the town. They own homes in the town of Arlington. Okay? Essentially, we're talking about the property at 887 Mass Ave in Arlington. And we would like to tear down the ugly cement building that's been there for many, many years, okay, and put up a mixed-use development. We'd like to have 3 commercial units on the lower level. We'd like to have two bedroom units on the second level, two bedroom units on the third level. Now, in order to get there, we need relief from you folks, okay? And the relief that we need would be under section 5.04, that is mixed use in a B2A zone. We would also need relief with respect to parking in a commercial district, and that's under section 8.07. We need relief under section 8.12 with respect to allow modification of parking loading spaces as well. And lastly, of course, we need relief from section 11.06, environmental design review. Now, again, I don't need to emphasize to you what this property is all about. This property is the main thoroughfare running through the town of Arlington from the city of Cambridge and going up to the town of Lexington. And it's crying out for development at this point, and we're here to try to make that happen. What we're proposing is the commercial space on the first floor, which would essentially be under 3,000 square feet. If we were 3,000 square feet or above, we would have a parking issue. We do not have a parking issue. We have 2,477 square feet, which is well under the 3,000 square feet that would trigger that. With respect to the 2 residential units on the first level, the net usable square feet for that unit, and this is in my statement that I've given to you folks, okay, is 1,393 square feet. The third level is 1,409 square feet. Now, with respect to the 4 residential units, we would need 6 parking spaces. And the parking spaces are laid out on the plan, and Michael's going to talk about that shortly, okay? But we do need 6 parking spaces, and we provide the 6 parking spaces. One of the issues that we're going to have is, and this is why we're advertising under section 8.07, is to acquire that 6th parking space. We need relief under 807. Why? Because that space, as shown on the plan, which Michael will show you momentarily, okay, is parking in a front yard, okay? And we can't really park in a front yard without getting relief from the ARB. And the section that we've advertised that under is section 8.07, and that section allows this board to grant us relief for that parking space in the front yard. The front yard is on Shiloh Court, okay? That's where the front yard is. And what you folks would have to conclude and infer from the presentation is that that parking space is necessary and convenient to the public interest. And I would make an argument, as I did in my statement, that it most certainly is, and the public interest and the convenience is that, again, you've had this derelict site for eons, okay, that has been there, and we have two folks who are willing to spend the money to develop it into a mixed-use type of arrangement, which would give us more housing in the town of Arlington, which we desperately need, which would also lighten up that desolate space, okay, right next to the high school campus. We have commercial space there, and I note that I read the report from the planning department, and they make the comment that maybe by doing what we're doing as far as the site is concerned, that might encourage someone who owns the garage, which is right next door to the west, okay, to in fact develop that site as well. That could happen, okay? Right now, maybe there's no interest in doing that because the site, our site, is so ugly at this point. So, with respect to the relief that we need it under 807, and as I say, you've got to make a finding there, as I've indicated, that it's convenient or necessary to the public interest, okay? One of the reasons that my clients need the 6 parking spaces is, again, I've mentioned, others have walked away from this site, okay? We don't want to walk away, we want to develop the site, okay? To do so, we did a market analysis, and that market analysis has told us that we need the 4 units, and we need 6 parking spaces. And not 3 parking spaces, not 4 parking spaces, not 5 parking spaces, 6 parking spaces. So we're asking for that relief to be able to develop the site. With respect to the section 8.12, there are a lot of requirements for parking there, and I've cited them all in my statement, okay, that I've given you folks, okay? We comply with those dimensional parking requirements set forth in section 8.12. For example, we're not going to have any compact parking. That's one of the no-nos. Well, if we have it, we have to do certain things. We're not going to have compact parking. One of the other issues that is provided for in 8.12 is stormwater water mitigation. We've met extensively with the town engineer on that regard. In that regard, you've got a letter from the town engineer that basically says we don't even need to comply with the storm management bylaw. However, we have come up with a stormwater mitigation plan. And I believe you have a copy of that stormwater mitigation plan in the submission that we gave to you. We're going to be getting rid of 600 square feet of impervious cement, okay, with respect to what we're going to be doing, and Michael will talk about that in terms of landscaping and the like. There are other things we have to comply with under 8.12, such as having a bumper of masonry, steel, or heavy timber. We're going to have that. We're going to comply with all of those provisions. With respect to parking, the parking is laid out on the plan. You can see that there's easy access to the driveway from the parking spaces, as shown on the plan. With respect to one of the other issues that we've been advertised for, and that is the fact that we're going to be within 50 feet to the curb line of an intersection, the intersection being Shiloh Court and Mass Ave. So we need relief from that provision as well. That's another provision that we'll be asking you to give us a special permit for, and it's been advertised for that, and that also is contained in my statement as well. We're going to be eliminating the curb cut on Massachusetts Avenue, and that is gone, which is a good thing. You're not going to have traffic actually coming out onto Mass Ave. The traffic will be coming out onto Shiloh Court, which is much less travel, for sure, okay? With respect to the parking and loading spaces, they're going to arrange so that we're not going to have the backing vehicles out onto Shiloh Court, okay? That's not going to happen. We've also gone to the extent, and I went to school on this from the last hearing I had with you folks, okay, on a different matter, that it's always nice to come in with something with respect to bicycles, okay? So we're going to provide a bicycle rack at the site, even though we don't have to, okay? You don't have to if you're under 8 in terms of the parking spaces that you have, in accordance with the terms of the zoning bylaw. But we're going to have a bike rack, and that's shown on the plans as well. There's one other issue, and I'm going to mention this, Michael, even though I said I wouldn't, okay? And then I'm going to turn it over to you, okay? With respect to the parking, okay? I had suggested that we might be able to allow some of the commercial employees to use the residential parking if in fact those folks are going to work during the course of the day. The problem with that is that we're providing a bike rack, and we're indicating and encouraging the tenants to use the MBTA across the street and the MBTA in front of the Stop and Shop. Now, if they do that, then that's going to encourage them to leave their cars in the parking lot. So if they leave their cars in the parking lot, then we would not be able to provide space for the commercial employees to park. So I'm asking you, if you do decide that you're going to grant us relief here, that don't mandate that in fact we have to do that, okay? Maybe have us, encourage us to talk with these tenants and have the tenants try to achieve that if we can. But again, we have no control over what they're going to do in terms of whether they're going to take their cars to work or not. But again, we'll encourage them, MBTA, and we'll encourage them to use bicycles if in fact that's something they would like to do. Michael, I think I'm going to turn it over to you and to let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Bob, for the very concise summary of our project. Okay.
Go ahead.
Pull the curtain here. Awesome. So as Bob said, this project is at 87 Mass Ave. I'm just trying to figure out how to...
Can you take the dim the lights maybe?
Yeah, you can turn the lights off for I'm sure everybody on the board and everybody in the audience is familiar with where this project is, between the Stop and Shop and the Arlington High School on the north side of Mass Ave as you head towards Lexington. As Bob mentioned, this site has been derelict since he can remember. And we'll say that John and I both went to Arlington High School in the early 80s, and I don't remember the site ever being viable. Currently, as it sits right now, it's a single 1.5 story structure. I'm going to assume it used to be a gas station maybe back in the day. I don't know if it was potentially related to the structure in back of it. It's about 6,200 square feet of lot, which between what's now the wine store and Schuler Court. Existing conditions. This is what the building looks like today. This is what the buildings look like as long as I can remember, other than the fence. There's a new addition to this site. It's a south elevation. It clearly needs a new roof. Again, another shot from the south elevation. East elevation as you're heading up Mass Ave, heading west. That's what you see. That elevation as you're heading east on Mass Ave from the heights down. So what we're hoping to achieve here tonight is presenting a project that we think has a great impact on the community and fits right in with the neighborhood. What we'd like to do is have at the ground level have potentially 3 commercial units, mixed use, whatever the zoning would allow in those areas. There'll be a full basement with some mechanicals, obviously, with some commercial units and residential units up above. We will certainly need some mechanical space. Again, not occupiable, but certainly for mechanical systems. The second and third floors are exactly the same. 2 bedroom units there. Both approximately roughly 1,400 square feet of living area, give or take a few square feet. Basically, these are the developed elevations. It would be some composites, some cementatious clapboard, some panelization, some contemporary windows. The goal was to try to make it a little contemporary that fit the neighborhood still. Again, rear and side elevation, all pretty similar to what you've seen on the renderings, what you will see on the renderings going forward. Again, same rendering. So this would be, this elevation would replace the south elevation. That's how you would approach the building, heading east, coming down from the heights. Am I doing this one? So I think I did, yeah. So that's the elevation. Again, that's been the cover sheet here. We think is the money shot in a sense, heading west towards the heights. This is the proposed site plan that we talked about. Again, you can see that there's 6 parking spaces out back. They all fit to the size of the zoning except for one closest, space F, closest to the to Schuler Court. That's 18 feet. The rest of them are that are perpendicular spaces at 22 feet, and A and B have enough clearance to get out of there. As you can see, there'll be a little canopy over the front. The first floor steps back 3 feet. Again, landscape plan we talked about. The site is right now 100% impervious. There is no stormwater management on the site. There's not a stick of grass. It's all asphalt. So what this project proposes to do, build a structure, open up the sidewalk a little more at the front, a little canopy, nice wide sidewalk there. We'll close up the curb cut that's there and add approximately 600 square feet of landscaping. The trash receptacles will screen with some arborvitaes, and we'll try to get on the west side here, just a little bit of private space if somebody wanted to, and one of the residents wanted to hang out there. They wouldn't be right on Mass Ave. As Bob mentioned, we'll install the wave style bike rack there as well. Stormwater management, I don't know if anybody's really interested in that, but we'll put some subsurface stormwater management structures there. They're basically plastic half circles, truncated circles, a bed of gravel. All the water will be, and I believe all the water from the roof at this point in time. So we're going to recharge the roof water. And the good thing about that is that's all clean water, right? At this point in time, it's not oily runoff. So we're going to make the site, more than half of the site will be recharged, which it's not happening now. Precedents, again, we kind of, the site's really limited. I mean, it is a small site, it's not very deep, but we wanted to kind of come up on, my client and I rode around looking at a lot of stuff to try to decide what we wanted to do here. And this is the, and again, I just kind of borrowed the shape here. This is the Rand that's in Porter Square, and it's, I don't know if it's occupied yet, but it's been, it was under construction last time I was down there. Again, this is kind of where we borrowed the shapes. The materials are a little different, but we kind of borrowed the shape from there. And again, another kind of mixed-use development. You can see the overhangs and stuff, so we want to kind of incorporate some of the jogs, so it didn't look like a trailer. Have a few jogs in there, and kind of address the mixed-use. The mixed-use space is one, and the residential up above is something different. And with that, I don't know if Bob has any thoughts, but we'd be happy to answer any questions at any time.
I think we've said what we had to say, and we're asking for your consideration at this point.
Let's start with questions from the board, and then I'll open it up to public comment. Kim.
Well, I want to talk a little about the site plan, and I'm just wondering, thank you. When you look at the site plan,
You have it up to it.
that's great. Earlier on, I asked what is a legal parking space, and you're saying it's 8 feet, right? Not 9 feet, which you guys showing here. I'm just wondering, space B, I find very awkward.
Space, which space?
B.
Yep.
Very awkward to pull into and pull out of, okay? So what I was thinking of, a suggestion that would solve some of these problems that I'm going to bring up, is if you cut into the building another 3, maybe 4 feet down at the rear end of the building, and then you can, since there's no zero side yard setback, you can increase it out to the west side a little more to kind of get back your space that you need. I know you need space to make this project work, With this right here, you have two spaces that pull straight right in from drive lane there. Then what it allows you to do is move space C, D, E, and F west, because you don't need that big, long space for the pull out that angle anymore. And that gives you a buffer zone in the front there, which is my big concern right now, okay? Because you have a car right on the sidewalk there, and you're asking for relief on that. And I'm saying, by changing some of your parking around a little bit, you may have less of an impact there. So this way, at least you put some shrubs and have some greenery there. So you don't have headlights blasting into the high school. Okay, I mean
Well, high school's not really up and running.
No, but it's our open space in our town, you know, and I'm just a little concerned about that. Also, when you move space A and B down south on the plan there, it will allow you to relocate your trash containers into that corner there, freeing up that corner space there, so you have more of a little courtyard, more of a gesture through that corner there. But right now, what you got there is a bunch of bushes hiding some trash cans. I don't think you have enough trash cans there either. You only got 2 cans there. Well, it looks like 2 cans. I could be wrong.
6 yard.
So it's a 6. Oh, so it's not one of those.
It's a small dumpster.
It's not one of those little 50 things you pull out.
It'd be a
No.
small
Okay.
receptacle.
I was thinking maybe you can put those rolling carts in, and tuck it into the corner there.
Like something a little more durable, but, okay.
Well, they could be metal or whatever, but you can tuck them in that corner. Then now that opens up that whole space there, and it gives you more space to maybe have one more bicycle parking there instead of just that one you got off this side there. And allows that little open area to be a little more open in that corner, because it's really tight there. That corner's really, really tight. And then I can see giving some relief to the curb cut there because it's so close to the corner. I have no issues. I mean, I like the project. I like what you're doing there. It's been an eyesore for a long time. I'm just asking you, could you relook at it again to rework some of these little details in so that you can make it work a little better and address some of these concerns. One of the concern is parking F being right on the side there. The trash cans being right at the corner lot there. And in space B, having every little space to pull in and pull out of. I think you get more value out of that space if it was just a straight pull in, pull out. So I think if you offset the building 3 or 4 feet and then gain it back going west, you still have the same amount of square footage. Yes, there's a couple of jogs in there that might cost a bit more, but I think the value in return for that higher value parking space will offset each other.
So, I understand your thoughts with space B. I do think that there is that space is actually 2.5 feet wider than what's required. I think in the other space next to it, I think is 10 feet, is that what it says?
8, no, it says 9.
The space A is 9 feet wide?
Oh, no, space A.
10.5 feet wide?
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess we could have drawn that a little differently, and showed 9 feet and 9 feet, and you might have felt a little more comfortable about how those spaces work.
I still think it needs to be.
In theory, I understand what you're saying. I don't want to move the building any more west. There is a fire rating issue that we have to address with one building on top of the other one that close, that I don't want to move it anymore.
You're gonna have a fire rating anyways because you're parking adjacent to the building. You need a 2-hour rating, rated wall to any parking space there.
Okay, and how does that interact with the building next door?
In which direction?
I'm sorry, the wine shop.
I'm talking about that, there's a gap right now of 4'6" or 4'8" there, right? And you don't wanna move it any closer.
Right.
I think you're within the range where that wall's rated anyways.
Yeah, no, potentially.
So moving it further over is not increasing the rating or anything else. You're rating that wall no matter what.
Yep.
That's my belief, okay?
Possibly.
So by moving it over, you gain your square footage. If you don't wanna move it over, just give it the square footage, that's okay too. I'm just trying to be fair and looking at, the numbers have to work out, and I appreciate you trying to do that, and I like that. I'm just trying to give you some options so that we can get back some, because I'm really concerned about that corner of the street there. I mean, having a car right at that street there, having your trash cans right at that corner there, it could be a great opportunity for a little small courtyard there, and then, you know, I'll let Andy talk a little more how you turn that building, how you also look out the side, so it's not like a side yard, it's actually the front turns that corner a little bit and becomes like the money shop, the predominance of it there. You just have a gesture of a window there. I think you should really turn it a little bit more and give it more of a corner. It's actually a corner retail space. You should make it a corner retail space. I think that would help.
Well, yeah, and,
Right,
okay,
quite a
on the
bit of
first
value.
floor?
Yes.
And we have, actually, if you look at the, hold on a second.
You got one
Just to
window,
answer
right?
that question, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can have some wall space though. Yeah, understandable, yeah, we do have a window down there in the right side elevation, east.
Yeah, I think
was it?
You can pull that over more, just really open that up a little bit and really see that corner there, because it's a very predominant corner. It's right next to a big front of the high school there. And the high school's gonna be new fairly soon, hopefully. All right.
It's not our board.
Hmm?
It's not our board's purview.
No, but I'm just thinking, you know, that's gonna be a real nice area. You know, so I'm just encouraging that little corner there, because right now, if you look at it, the way it's turned and the way it's really tight, it's really cramped for space. I'm gonna just leave it at that for now.
Go ahead, Andy.
Can you go back to the plan for a second?
Site plan?
Yeah. What's the distance between the face of the building and the curb?
The face of the building in the, on Mass Ave?
On Mass Ave?
Yeah.
It's 3.75 at short estimate. It widens out as you get closer to.
Yeah, so it's 3.75 there to the property line, and I believe that's sidewalk is about 8 feet wide. So it's about 11 feet plus or minus.
To the face of the building. So it's 8 feet to the property line,
Yes, the sidewalk's about 8 feet wide.
and then it's another 3 to 4 feet.
Yeah, 3.75 feet to the building.
So it's,
And
so
as you
it's-
come down,
I think one of the things, well, I should say first, I think you're right, this is an important site. This is a very important site. It faces on the high school. Because of its corner location, it makes basically a facade facing into the high school. It's as important as any other downtown Mass Ave location that I could think of. And it's important to the town, I believe, that for a number of reasons, that this be an important building and be a great contribution to the town. I think one issue is the street, because we've spent a lot of time, the town has spent a lot of time on improving the streetscape, whether it be trees and planters, benches, sidewalk paving, enough dimension on that street that it could even have seating on the edge of the retail, even though it wouldn't come out that far. So I think one issue right now is you're quite tight to the curb. Because the building overhangs, you really only have a dimension of 8 feet to the face of that eyebrow that you got on there, that arcade.
The overhang, yeah.
The overhang. I think that's too tight. And I'm just gonna give you my comments, because I know that working it out, as an architect, I understand the issues. There's a push and pull, but I think you're too tight. It's not offering enough to the street. And, you know, every project that we review has those issues, and this one seems to compromise what's going on other parts of
Are
the
you
town.
thinking that there should be space on the sidewalk for leisure activities in terms of, as planning have indicated in their report, people sit down, okay, maybe,
I would start with
That's what you're thinking, yeah.
a tree,
yeah.
which could be 4 feet. That already gives you a zone of
Yeah.
4 feet where people can stop and pull over from the traffic going along, or the
Yeah.
traffic, or the pedestrian traffic that is looking. So that's a burden, I understand, to you, but I think it's really important to the town that the streetscape, the street feel, this is one more big important piece of our Mass Ave frontage, and it's gonna be continued, and you're setting a precedent that's gotta be not only maintain what we've done before, but represent the aspirations of the town's planning and master plan. I think You know, I have a few comments just about how you kind of handled the overall design, but it doesn't feel like a building of Mass Ave that it should be. It doesn't feel important enough. It feels kind of like a building that was designed from other pieces. In fact, you kind of showed some different things that you were looking at. And it doesn't feel like a solid building. It feels, you've got it a little bit asymmetrical, you've got things going on that don't feel strong enough. I think to be more specific about it, you could handle the corners much better. That's already open on both corners, and I think one of the things I wanted to ask the architect if you could consider using the same corner layout that you do on the east side, where the living room is in the corner and you get a corner living room.
Mm-hmm.
Since both units are the same exact size, could you,
Yeah, they're close to the same size, yeah.
could you manage to do a symmetrical arrangement so that you put the same living room as you've got in the...
On the west
Yeah.
corner? Yeah, potentially.
I'm not against any kind of asymmetrical buildings. It can be exciting, it can be great, but now we're on Mass Ave, and if you start working your way down, you see these kind of very dignified, street-friendly buildings. And I think that, in this case, particularly since it's on the corner, and actually that north corner is going to be exposed, that symmetrical arrangement might actually benefit how you handle the facade.
So the same similar bump out that we
Right.
have on the east side, on the
Yeah.
west side.
It doesn't, it feels like it could be somewhere off of Mass Ave, it could be somewhere around. It doesn't feel like a Mass Ave building. I made some comments, which I'm guilty of being playing architect during the day too, which I did on an elevation that kind of help articulate what I'm trying to say about it, and if you will allow me to.
Please,
Okay.
that's why we're here.
So what I'm considering here is to think about this thing as a more symmetrical building. So now I'm not going to make this a design, but it brings out points that I think may be important to the overall design. One is to think about those corners as really important spots. They turn the corner, they could be of a bigger scale. I think you're starting to do that kind of thing. So I'm kind of saying to reinforce that, so that you do that on both sides. The second thing is to don't let that big eyebrow come out at all. Don't make a big fat overhang. Let that building have a fascia here that can accept awnings and signage and all the things that we want to see for our retail on Mass Ave, on any building that you see. So you have a storefront, you either have an awning in front of it or you have a sign band like that. And I would raise that building, and I don't know if I'm violating any kind of...
No, I think there's...
I would
60
prefer this
feet or
building
something.
be 4 feet taller if you were able to get a much more gracious storefront, an open storefront.
We talked about that earlier.
Then I would make a hierarchy where here you see a symmetrical building, okay? So here your smaller units, and they don't go all the way up. So you let the surface of the building go like that, and then these are kind of Oreo windows or attachments. So this kind of, whether you pull...
You can't get much more symmetrical than what you've drawn.
Yeah, I know. And you can, this is only trying to articulate what I think a Massachusetts Avenue building should feel like. It deserves to be, maybe it's not perfectly symmetrical all in the middle, but I think you should work on the corners. You should raise that retail up. And give a little bit of hierarchy to the way the top is handled. Whether you extend it out or whatever you do, don't make it a bunch of little hats. I think the little hats have been overdone, because I see them everywhere as along Route 2, and they're okay, but they seem a little kind of been there, done that kind of feeling, whereas I think a more original building here on Mass Ave, we deserve a more original building here on Mass Ave, and a little more guts to it. So whether it's symmetrical or not, I think those kinds of things, the corners, the base, getting rid of that lip, that overhanging eyebrow, and more of a strong top to it. I don't mind if you push up, maybe you push up on the corners, but not in a kind of ad hoc way that looks like, where am I going with the building kind of thing.
I don't disagree with your corner stuff, your corner comments. Certainly the heading west is much more predominant than heading east.
Correct.
And they're coming east. It's,
Maybe that should be.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that you can't do it. I just don't. It doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same bang that you get coming.
That's a good point.
Coming north,
Maybe you want
west.
to make that
maybe a little
east
smaller.
corner more important, but recognize that the other
Yep.
side is a corner as well. So don't let it just kind of bleed around. And I think, if you could, and now I'm getting into your budget, but if you could afford balconies, if you could afford, you've got nice shadow affecting it by pushing in now, but if you could have a balcony or even a Juliet type of balcony that's applied with railings on it, another level of detail. We've got some beautiful buildings in Arlington, and this looks a little stripped down.
Can I go back to your comment about where it sits on the site?
Yes.
Okay, so the building itself is roughly, I'm gonna say 12 feet, really, to the storefront, to the curb, is about 12 feet. And there was a little bit, I wanted the overhang particularly to act as kind of something to engage the pedestrian. Can you walk through there and at least you have some cover, because that's a salt elevation, so it was really gonna get beat with the sun. And a little bit of shade relief from the overhang would be helpful, and obviously a little weather relief. I understand what you're saying about making it a little more engaging. I think we're gonna be challenged pushing it back any further. Mr. Lau wants to take a chunk off of the back of it, you'd like to push the front of it.
Yeah, right.
There's gonna be nothing left of this thing after it's done. I totally understand, as an architect, I'm sure you understand the challenges with the size of a site, and there's the site, and there's obviously some goals that you have to achieve with a project like this to make it work, to make it feasible.
You don't need to put the lip in order to have your bump out. You can just have the bump out be a part of the facade.
That's not engaging a major street though. That picture's take. There's a parking lot.
Got it.
There's a parking lot.
Got it. But what I'm saying is, you don't need to have a lip there.
No, I understand.
Let it be awnings. Let it be regular storefront like we have all around. And shade can be provided by awnings.
Fair enough. If the awnings can overhang the sidewalk, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what we normally do.
That's fair.
Do you have the ability to grant us that relief too? I checked with Mike Brown on that.
Yeah, so I think given the relief that you guys are asking for, the importance of the site, that some care should be taken along, and I'm giving architectural comments, but they're germane to the feel of the building on the site, the importance of the site, and the street. That's my comments.
Thanks, Andy. David?
So first, I'd like to say I'm very excited that someone is trying to develop this site, because it certainly is one of the major eyesores on Mass Ave. I do appreciate that you have a bike rack on the plan. That's definitely a good thing.
Told you.
I'd like to amplify some of the comments my colleagues have made. First, just as someone who isn't an architect, my initial reaction to the building is, while it's not objectionable, it's pretty vanilla. As my colleague was saying, it would be nice to see something that somehow reflects more of Arlington in such a prominent location. And I'll leave it to you to figure that out.
Your colleagues figured it out for me. I guess, not to interrupt, but I'm going to take a picture of that too.
I'm going to give that to you. Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about transportation. There are few sites in Arlington that are better suited to the emerging reduced car use lifestyle than this site. It's next door to a supermarket and a liquor store. I think maybe there's a Cleaners across the street. There are several restaurants there. CVS is a block away. The Minuteman is 2 blocks away. And the town's continuing to improve its bicycle facilities on Mass Ave. And I think there's some easy things you can do to encourage both the residents and as well as customers and employees of the retail establishments to get there by means other than driving. And then there are some more challenging things. And I'll start off with the easy things. First of all, as much as I appreciate the wave bike rack, wave bike racks are awful. Find another design. They look nice, but functionally they're terrible, and they're not recommended. So that should be pretty easy. So in a residential setting, having an exterior bike rack like that is just not good enough for the residents. It lacks security. You know, if people aren't using their bikes every day, then bikes could be out there for days or weeks at a time, exposed to the elements and exposed to vandalism and theft. So I'd like you to consider looking at the floor plan on the first floor. I'd like to think about whether there would be some space you could take from the commercial square footage off of the residential entryway to create something like a bike closet. You don't have a lot of units in this building, so it wouldn't have to be very big, but there's some very good systems, like wall-mounted systems where the bikes can hang in very little space, as well as floor systems, but to allow the residents to bring their bikes inside where they're protected from the elements and from theft and everything else, but still at ground level, so that they're not having to carry them up and down the stairs, which really isn't practical. So that's a little bit more complicated than changing the type of bike rack you have outside, and I still think you should have an outside bike rack, because that's nice for people visiting the residence or patronizing the stores, or for employees coming to work at the stores. But I think, particularly given the location and the desirability of being able to bike in that area, that you should think about better bike storage for the residents. So now I want to talk about something a little more complicated. But since you're already here asking for relief, I might encourage you to ask for a little bit more. And that has to do with the number of parking spaces. Because it is such a great location for people to use other modes of transportation, and we do have mechanisms for reducing parking spaces below the minimum required by encouraging other forms of transportation through a transportation demand management plan. I'd like you to think about possibly reducing the parking spaces down to 4, which is 1 per unit. And that would solve some of the issues that Ken brought up. It would potentially open up even a little bit more space for green space, or for shifting the footprint of the building a little bit to address some of these other issues. But I think you've got bus transportation right there. There's a lot of things within walking distance. There's great access to the bike path and to the bike facilities on Mass Ave. So I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better location to appeal to people who want to live that kind of lifestyle without completely eliminating parking. So I would like you to think about that seriously. And then while you're at it, and since you would be abandoning the curb cut on Mass Ave, we would like to see some pedestrian upgrades there, like granite curbing and concrete sidewalks.
It's concrete now, and that's granite curb now, so I don't think that's.
No, he's saying where the curb cut
Well,
is.
Yeah, no, I'm saying
Yeah,
that's right,
across,
yeah.
we carry the granite straight down, you can't, we're not gonna put like 2 minutes there or slope granite, it'll be
Fair enough.
vertical
He
granite.
wasn't clear.
And this, yeah, that's a no-brainer.
But I think, I do understand the sensitivity of the parking issue and
Our
concern.
market analysis flies in the face of what you're suggesting, by the way.
I understand.
People want a unit with a parking space, okay? And if they can't get it, they go elsewhere, okay?
Well,
And our problem is that everybody's walked away from this site, okay? We're trying to make it happen, but as was mentioned, okay, we have a budget that we have to comply with, okay? And if we try to, if 2 of the units have parking spaces and 2 and whatever don't, okay, the people who don't have the parking spaces are going to have their noses out of joint, and they're not gonna buy at that point. That's what our market analysis tells us, okay? So I see what you're saying.
Why does it have to be 2 to
Pardon me?
0? Why can't it be 1 for each?
Pardon me?
Why can't it be 1 for each unit that's in there? It doesn't have to be 2 have
Yeah,
2
I'm
spots, 1 have
suggesting
none.
1 per unit,
I think
not,
we're suggesting 1 per
not
unit.
some
So 4.
units
4,
without.
not 3.
Each one has a deeded
4
spot.
spaces.
Yeah.
4
Um,
units, 4 spaces.
You
1 for
know,
each.
and access to all of the existing opportunities for not using cars that are so prevalent at that location. It would be difficult to find a better location for a development
So
like
what
that.
you're essentially doing is you're drawing us into the transportation management plan, okay, even though we didn't come here
I am.
with that in mind, okay, that's what you're doing.
I'm asking you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
consider that, because I think this is a near ideal location for that kind of approach. And I'm not going to debate your market analysis,
Yeah.
but, you know, there certainly is a demand for properties in locations like this where people can choose to use other modes of transportation. I think that's it for the moment.
Okay. I'd like to see that market analysis, if you don't mind supplying it to us, just to see where we're going with that. In theory, this is a great idea. This is what we as a board have been working for. This is what we've pushed in front of town meetings, why we wanted the mixed-use bylaw amendments pushed through. You are the first group to come in front of us with a project on Mass Ave. Do something better than this. We've asked people in the past to really take a look at the neighborhood around them and put a project in there that fits. This design, the colors, everything about it seems like it sticks out. It doesn't fit in the neighborhood. I think Andy and David have already really well critiqued it. I want to see what Andy drew up. But you know, you are the first group. You have an opportunity to put something on a block that is in sore need of development. There've been some great steps made. Excited to see what happens with the high school, but let's do it in a way that kind of leads the change there. I'd like to see how we can change the design. If you could pull up the Rand building in Ford Square again, I think you are on something better. The design is a little bit different, but the materials that are used, the balance in this building, the way it faces the street, the tall retail walls,
Corner window.
the corner there, the way it fits the streetscape, I think pulling more from that might lead you to what I think we're looking for. That's a much more welcoming, interesting, open building than I think what's shown in the mock-ups
It's
here.
not symmetrical, so it doesn't have to be symmetrical.
Yeah.
So, okay, can I quote you on that when I come back here, obviously,
Yes.
not symmetrical. This is also, I will say, this is a much more dense populated area too, and there's gonna be a lot more foot traffic here. Don't disagree, and it's one of the things that, you know, jumped out at me.
Take a look at some of the other things that we've said yes to recently too. There's a project on Broadway that fit the corner of the streetscape very nicely.
Yeah, and that eyebrow is way up there, so that's kind of makes it.
Yeah, there's an overhang right above street level though, right above the retail level.
Where?
Plan hearing.
Yeah, but that's way up high, so that there's room for an awning.
Yeah, no, a sign band,
It-
I don't
Yeah.
disagree with
You've
that.
got it all compressed
It's
down.
compressed,
Yeah.
it looms over the sidewalk.
Height's okay, happy to add height to it.
Yeah.
Don't want people to be freaked out the next question, oh, I can't see the sun anymore. You know, that's the next question.
Well, I mean, you're fortunate that you're not really impacting a lot of residential.
Yeah, not at all,
homes.
actually, I agree, don't disagree.
So that gives you some more leeway to do some more interesting things there.
Okay.
I'm not gonna beat you up anymore on that, but I'm gonna allow the public to do so at this point. So please, do it in an orderly fashion, raise your hands, I'll call in one by one, stand up, state your name and address, and we'll go from there. Yes, sir, in the back. Cheers.
Hi, Eric Pagel, I'm the owner of Mystic Wine Shop, and having been running Mystic Wine Shop for the last 4 years, there isn't a week that doesn't go by that someone doesn't say, when are you gonna fix the parcel? I have to say, I don't own the parcel, so I'm really happy to see that someone's coming in and doing something. I think it'll be a nice addition, obviously, to the neighborhood. It's really great. My biggest concern, like everyone, is parking, is that the people who have these tenants, who they buy these condos, they have guests over. They have overnight guests. They have no place to park. They cannot park in Mystic Wine Shop. I've already deeded parking spots to Jackie, who's going to open up a spin studio in the morning, and her classes start at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I cannot have people taking up my spots that I've already given away to somebody else. Plus, during the wintertime, snow removal, my guy won't be able to plow or remove snow if someone's parked in there overnight as well. So I'll have to start I don't want to be a bad guy. I like being a good person. But I will have to tow, and I don't want to go down that road. So that's a big concern for me.
And the intention is clearly not to have people park in your space.
Right.
Totally understood. Again, interesting point about the parking space, and we talked about this earlier. Great point. Visitors. You know, you can't park on the street. The last time I checked, I haven't lived here in a while, but you can't park on the street overnight around here, right?
Right.
Anymore? Parking bad?
Somebody has a guest overnight.
It'd be nice to have
Where they park.
those extra spaces as a visitor spots too. You're absolutely right. So we'll leave it at
Is there
that.
any stop and shop parking available?
Pardon me?
They're working on it, they haven't been willing
No.
thus far. It's hard to get an answer from Stop and Shop, but
Okay.
I've had.
It's also a liability for Stop and Shop. Quite
So
frankly.
that lot is closed at some point?
Well, no, but you're at risk and they're at risk too.
I don't let
Something
people park
happens
in
over
my
there.
parking lot because of the insurance issue.
Yeah.
Okay? I get them out of there. There's signs up saying, no parking,
Yep.
okay? If they park, I go out and I have them leave. Otherwise, my insurance is gonna be in jeopardy.
How are you handling it? If you don't want to short circuit, but Mystic, how are you handling using the shared parking with the exercise place?
Jackie is, we're not busy up until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So our front parking lot there is not that, it's pretty open. So when Jackie's classes start at 5:30 in the morning, we don't even open up until 9:30, and then, you know, so her classes will probably be ending like around 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So after that, there's no more spin studio activity going on. And then, and that's how our agreement is. In the afternoon, I don't have that agreement with her because we need that parking in the afternoon.
And I'm sure there's some liability waiver in your agreement. And if somebody gets hurt on there, somebody's going to spin class, parks in your parking lot, turns an ankle walking on your parking lot, they're not coming after you first. And I agree, I think we could, I think it'd be wonderful if Stop and Shop would allow some overnight overnight parking when they're not using it. I don't know what influence the town has on something like that, but again, it's a challenge.
I mean, this property was purchased from Stop and Shop, so there's dialogue, there's restrictions from Stop and Shop, and we've been in dialogue with parking. They haven't been inclined to eliminate any of the restrictions or give up any parking.
You can't buy a piece of gum in this building due to the deed restrictions. Not a gum, mint, nothing. There's some significant deed restrictions on this property. Specifically
How's that
Stop
gonna
and Shop.
impact your ability to lease out the commercial space?
Because there's a lot of other things that you can do, and then, but that's basically food and drink, that's prepared meals, anything, so it's, there's a handful of things that won't happen here. But anything else that's allowed in zoning will
So no
Sure.
cafe, no coffee shop, no sandwich shop?
Not as it
That's
exists today.
food.
But when we talk about financial issues, there's issues with this lot. There's a size issue and there's restriction issue.
Yeah, that's an impediment to this too as well. The deed restriction is a challenge, and so we have to find other ways to make this appealing and quite frankly, financially appealing to the developer.
Other questions? Ms. Mann?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Shea. I live on Schuler Court, 14 Schuler Court, so I'm a couple doors down. So thanks very much. It's I've been living with the now fenced-in area. And I do have some concerns. I appreciate your design and I appreciate the thoughtful comments from the committee. I have some concerns. Initially, I had some concerns when I heard this was coming in, and then I had some concerns looking at the design. Andrew, you spoke about the street feel along Mass Ave. I, of course, am concerned with the street feel along Schuler Court. It already feels like a sort of tucked-in, neglected area. I'm a little worried that it might feel more so with a big structure on the corner there. So I haven't seen any views of what this would look like along the street, but I do kind of worry about it. It's sort of towering. It doesn't match with the houses behind it. Our house is actually a historical building and a historically designated building, so I think that should come into play with the design considerations as well. It feels very tight. It feels really big on the spot. It just has that feel for it, so that's my first reaction, is like, ooh, that feels big. And then when I sort of think back, I think, oh, that feels big because of parking and because of use and because of, so I am worried about the parking and the parking overflow and the traffic overflow. So getting out of that street in the morning is really busy, and that's a very important intersection in the morning because it's people dropping kids off from school, it's pedestrians, it's cyclists leaving. So it's already a tight, I cycle out of there in the morning, and it's already a tight situation traffic-wise because people are coming in and out, dropping their kids off. There's one thing I appreciate of the current building there now is that you can see, right? There's so much open space. So coming up along the, to that traffic light, I can see to the right, I can see to the left, pedestrians can see, there are kids walking back and forth to school. So this would kind of close that in a little bit and reduce pedestrian visibility and bike visibility. But I also worry about having 6 cars coming out in the morning right around the time that I'm leaving for work and that people are going to school. So I think that's also a concern that the design should consider. Let's see. I think that is basically it. I do think that it does get to be very crowded at school drop-off and pick-off time, but it's also very crowded on weekends. That's a really crowded, there's a lot of jockeying for parking spaces along there on weekends because there are so many games and things going on behind the high school. So I think that should also come into consideration. I share David's concerns about making this contributing to a bikeable location, and I worry about the safety, the bike safety in front of the building. One more thing back on the parking. I wonder if you could consider having fewer residences instead of having 4 smaller residences. If you had 3, two smaller and 1 bigger, or carve up the space differently so that you don't need 6 parking spaces. All right, I threw a lot at you there. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jackie Maurer. I'm the owner of cycling studio going in 6th Schooler. Just a question to the proposers here. What do you see as the duration of the construction for a project this size once you're approved? And where do you see some of your dumpsters and things like that for waste and everything during construction going?
I would say optimistically, depending on when it started, 8 to 9 month project. Everything would be on site, or whatever we couldn't fit on there would wind up being taken off site daily. So there won't be, I mean, there might be a dumpster out there for a while, but it can certainly be shielded and it won't be there for the duration, potentially.
Actually, I have
Go ahead.
a somewhat related question, which is, has the site been assessed for any environmental hazards that might be encountered?
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
We're okay. We're okay.
Okay.
We're gonna have vapor barriers as well for stuff that is not even reportable, okay, so we're okay.
Which is interesting.
It is.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Sophie Bjorkson, 12 Schuler Court. So I just wanted to say also, this is very exciting. I moved to Arlington a year ago, and this is clearly an eyesore, so I'm very excited to hear that people are thinking about improving our neighborhood. And I also agree with the room that I do like this, but I think that maybe it does need to feel a little bit more neighborhoody, a little bit more with the historical feel that we currently have in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Anyone else? So, I think we have some questions and concerns that need to be answered. Clearly, we need to continue this to another date. Jenny, when can we come back on the agenda? Or how much time I can need to?
We'll have to get back to
You'll-
that. Jenny will
yeah.
follow up with you.
You'll have to continue to a date and then,
The dates that we
similar,
decided.
When
similar to
we
for the
figure out
first
what the
one.
next step is.
Okay.
right.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
Have you checked with have you reviewed this with the fire department yet?
No.
No, okay.
Inspectional services.
No, just, 'cause this is I'm assuming this is a fully sprinkled building, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're,
The wood frame, but fully sprinkled.
yeah, so that's why you have one stair.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep, there's a lot of, yep.
yeah.
I've done
It's
half,
good. It's
done
good.
half a code review on it, enough to know that we could build what I'm thinking.
Yes, I think so too. But is the water room in the basement or is it gonna be in the commercial space?
Good question, haven't drilled down to that level of detail, but if we could.
I'm just thinking that we keep carving away at your commercial space,
Yes.
that I feel bad that, you know,
That's the problem.
I feel for you, I really do.
No, but that's a necessary evil, and that's gonna have to be addressed, yep, but just have, we haven't drilled, you know,
Okay.
if we drilled down to an 80% or 80%
Fair
of
enough.
the drawings at this
Just-
point in time, we'd be spinning our wheels, I think.
Just wanna realize that we are carving away at this,
Yeah, in designing this, we've proposed something a lot smaller than what could be here. A lot shorter and a lot less. I mean, in theory, this can go all the way out to Schuler Court.
correct.
In doing that, you get that extra parking
Right,
space
right.
because you no longer have a front yard. And so we've presented something
That's a good point.
coming in here, trying to fit in the neighborhood, not cast shadows, not overpower that corner that is a major thoroughfare.
They could go to 4 stories, right?
Five.
Yeah.
And
So it's-
50,
it's-
is it 50 or 60?
Plus, it is
60,
separated
actually.
by,
So if you're at 3
separated
feet.
from the neighborhood by a building, by your building. So there is a
It's a buffer.
buffer, and there's also an open section at that corner, so the visibility issue. So there are some good things, I think, that are helping with your comments.
Yeah, initially there was, I think it was 8 units, 8 smaller units, and there's been some dialogue. And it's been reduced, and that is a great point, that we understand parking space F is a challenge. But into the compromise, right, if we, it is kind of interesting, you know, both of them being treated like front yards and that, and I suspect that's what the zoning says, that a corner lot, both of them are treated as front lots,
Correct.
front yards.
That's the interpretation.
Yes.
Yes, that is the interpretation, that's correct.
But it doesn't say that.
Yeah, is that, and I ask that because I do this all the time.
Yep.
Is that withstood a legal challenge at all?
I'm not aware of that.
Because I agree, I don't know that the verbiage on that is super clear. And, you know, not to be that, but you're right, we could, again, you push it out close to Schuler Court, and you don't have that issue, and then it is what it is, but, understand. Well, another comment is we've heard a lot of historical comments, geez, it wants to kind of fit the neighborhood, and then you kind of see Mr. West's thoughts, and I'm with you. More contemporary to me is how this wants to go.
I don't think it needs to be fully historical, but it just has to have a feel of scale, of detail, of material. My opinion.
spoke to all sides of the building, you'd hear something different. So, because on the one side, the 3 homes along Schuler, I'm not certain how to pronounce it at the moment, I've heard 3 different pronunciations. See, and you said something different.
I go back to the 60s, at high
Okay, is
school.
that where that comes from?
okay?
Okay.
Shiloh,
Shi-
that's how I learned.
That's new to me even tonight, yeah, there's a new way. All right, regardless.
So we'll continue this to a date that you'll work out with the planning department, and we'll have you back when those questions can be answered.
Do we need a motion or we good?
Yes.
I motion to continue this to our next available date.
Second.
To the next available? Well, the next
Well,
available date.
for the next
is-
two
Right
weeks.
date.
Good
When
date to be
when is the
determined.
next meeting?
June 29th, followed by July 17th. 26th.
June
26th, and then July 17th.
June 26th,
But we would need the materials within a week, it's too tight.
Yeah.
June 26th, and then what's the next one, July 17th?
17th, yeah.
Michael, is that enough time for us to do what we need to do?
What, a week? No,
June 25th?
no, no. No, we definitely won't be at the next meeting.
So July 17th is the
July
next
17th.
meeting. Is that the date that you should aim for? So we'll
Um,
continue it to that date.
Yeah, and if there's an issue, we can address it.
We can always.
You can always continue it again.
So Ken, you want to make a motion to continue?
Motion to continue to June,
July
sorry,
17th.
July 17th.
Yeah. It's important to keep in mind too, this site was a gas station, okay? So talk about traffic emanating and all of that from the site, okay? What was it doing is a gas station, okay? This is going to be a decided improvement to the site.
It's gonna be there for another 100 years, so let's get.
I know,
let's get it right.
but I go back that far. I second second motion.
Thanks, Sandy.
We're very encouraged.
We need a vote. We need to vote on the motion.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, really? Oh, it's my grandfather. Oh, all right. Yes, it is, yes. That's great.
We have additional business to conduct, so please take any conversations outside.
I want this great. Great, thank you. Just want to know more about this. Yes, great.
Hi, I'm Jackie, I'm Sophie. I live on Road 12, so myself, we're very excited that you're coming in.
It's great. Makes me happy to go to work.
Run out of bed.
This is my number one instructor.
All right, could you all take it?
Yeah.
You're okay.
I'm sure you love it.
Oh, yeah, we were at I think we have. We'll look at it. Thanks. I knew it was a day. I was struggling with the rest.
Thanks.
I believe it's been 6 months, right?
I know.
Okay, no, I just remember you left the.
When are you opening?
Well, we have this deadline on the 23rd for construction bids. Yeah, we got one bid that was super high. It's been about 30 minutes on the sofa in the position. And I got up, so we need more bids. So hopefully we get those in, and we get our permit.
Are we recessing?
I've lost control.
Bye-bye.
Andy, we'll be back.
I'm sorry.
Elizabeth Shea.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
I'll allow it.
What's the forecasted opening?
Well, if we like the bids we get,
Well, it's making us, it's like brand new. This, oh, it is like hot.
I think it's just a lot of.
Maybe it's trying to start.
I'm pretty comfortable, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's actually okay.
If it's just blasting
Yeah,
out
it's
of me.
blowing right on you,
Yeah, there's usually airs.
You want to switch?
yeah.
No, you stay there, girl.
You're good, you're good.
Not that Amy's not important, but.
I don't wanna be front and center, but thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 2, zoning bylaw recodification. Jenny.
All right, I've given you a handout. Everybody, I've not go around.
I have this.
We'll share. Here's an extra one for you, just for like the package. So what I gave to you is basically, well, I think what had been posted was 2 previous documents that you've already seen. Basically the first reading draft of the zoning bylaw recodified, and then the zoning review that I think was the most recent zoning review by RKG, done this year. And then what I've provided in this memo is basically a few things. The first of them, and I'm focused on actually 2 things right now, that have come up as sort of issues as part of the zoning recodification process that the zoning recodification working group would like a little direction from the board on. Those 2 things are environmental design review and signs. And I think if it's at all possible to get a little sense of direction on this tonight, that would be useful because we're about to go into the second reading draft of the new zoning bylaw. And then as you know, there's a meeting on July 13th. You won't start your hearings until the fall. But there's a public forum on July 13th, which is the first public forum.
That's when we're going to.
I hope so.
Just know
Yes.
everybody.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, July 13th. So we'd like to resolve a couple of these issues, or just get a sense of direction, at least soon. Okay, so what I've put into this memo is basically the salient points from the 2014 memo, which was put into the master plan. This was one of the appendices. And so all that I've cut and pasted here is basically from the 2014 RKG memo, is basically what they recommended the town take a look at as part of any recodification process. And that included some overarching comments like the town should give a staff authority to conduct site plan review for smaller projects that currently go through the EDR process. Then they talked about signs, that there's a whole regulatory process that needs to be completely overhauled, and reorganizing material and tables. Then back to EDR, they talked about really trying to figure out a way to better consolidate all of the site design components into that review process. It's trying to do a lot of things. And then in 2017, earlier this year, they did a follow-up memo that was part of their task as part of the zoning recodification contract. And so they went back into much more specific detail and feedback on both Article 7 signs, and those are all noted on the first page. Specifically that it's not in compliance with current 2 case law, major significant Supreme Court case and other case law around signs. And then on page 2, environmental design review, several comments on how to simplify this section, including getting rid of procedural language, and a lot of mix-up between rules and regulations. And then just in general, having a more straightforward process for applicants who are coming in with smaller requests compared to a larger development request, like for example the one we were just reviewing. And then I've summarized for you some of the snippets from the interviews that they did. I think, how many of you sat with them one-on-one for an interview? Any of you? Did they interview you?
No.
One-on-one? Anybody from the board? No, just came to the all board meeting then.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so then the RKJ interviewed a number of people. They interviewed developers, builders, architects. They interviewed past staff. There was a whole list of people who I don't have right before me at this moment in time, but anybody who's come before or experienced the environmental design review or any other process related to the zoning bylaw. And so they conducted those interviews earlier this year, and so I've pulled from that memo that they provided to the town some snippets around how things could be improved with the sign bylaw, and similarly how things could be improved with environmental design review. And then just in general, something that came up during the all board meeting I noted at the bottom. So what I'm looking for is, the first thing is with environmental design review. We our intention at this moment in time with the zoning recodification edit is to take away, there's a lot of rules and regulations that's mixed into the zoning bylaw that are very administrative. For example, telling applicants what they need to provide the board upon submittal of a special permit. That kind of stuff is actually throughout the zoning bylaw, but it's also stuff that relates to this particular board, and so I just want to flag that and make sure that you're comfortable with that being taken away. The second part that is being potentially changed is to bring environmental design review a little bit more aligned with something called site plan review and approval processes. I don't know how familiar you are with that. So I provided you with, on page 3, a sort of overview of what site plan review could look like, or a site plan review approval process. And I didn't want to give you like all of our revisions to the document. I didn't feel that that was appropriate. That at this stage, I want to just kind of get a sense of the direction we need to go in. But if we did more of an approval process, that's similar to what we're doing right now. It goes through and gets a special permit, that's fine. But then there could be a number of things that are just subject to site plan review and they happen administratively. Similar, frankly, to the way that we do some sign approvals. They happen administratively in the office, they don't come back to the board. And there are lots of things that happen at the board level that may not necessarily, that could potentially happen when they're smaller scale at a staff level. So that's something that we can explore further, and you would be brought into the processes to deciding what would flag the site plan review process versus the environmental design review special permit process. We can dive into that a little bit further. And I gave you some examples of communities that use either, you know, really good site plan review or have other sort of regulatory processes similar to what I'm talking about. And again, on your own, you're more than welcome to take a look at those examples. So that's one thing. And I guess the other part too, the way that the EDR is written right now is it's very, there's a lot of, it can be reduced quite a bit. The language itself is very, very descriptive and somewhat dated. And sometimes not even necessary, because in particular the stormwater bylaw, the way that we actually administer the stormwater bylaw versus what it says in the EDR is not actually, it doesn't work that way. So we would like to be able to have the ability to make these changes to EDR so that it can improve, not only improve your review process, but also begin to think about what we can do administratively to make things a little bit easier as part of just in general the review process. So that's some EDR and some potential changes that could happen there. I can pause and then we can talk about signs.
Let's talk about EDR first.
Okay, so EDR. Any questions?
So,
And David, you've been participating in these processes, so I should say, so maybe you want to add any other perspectives that I may have missed that have been shared at previous meetings.
well, I guess my perspective up to this point has been that the zoning recodification working group and this phase of the process itself has been really focused on essentially cleaning up the existing bylaw and making it more readable, more understandable, more usable by the people who actually need to use it to get things done. We occasionally have touched on things that are either clearly more substantive changes or are in kind of a gray area where we're not sure whether they're kind of administrative or organizational changes or really substantive changes that shouldn't be part of the current effort. And so, in thinking about some of the issues with EDR, that seems like an area that is largely in that gray area where
yes. That's why I wanted to bring it to a conversation.
Right.
Exactly.
So I think as we think about it here, we need to consider you know, what's easy to do, just to make the process clearer and more accessible within the existing context of the language in here versus, you know, where we think we have to significantly change the process. You know, is it more, if it's just updating the language so that it's not archaic language or it's not inconsistent with current case law or anything like that, I mean, that's clearly something we should be doing in this phase, but we have to just be conscious of where that's crossing the line into policy changes that would not be part of this phase of the recodification.
Okay.
And I don't know, do you have anything to add from your previous experience? You were there for...
I wasn't there for that long before you took over, so we didn't get to these issues. You know, I've thought about this, and I think I agree with you, David. We've talked a lot and assured people that we won't be making any policy changes, that this really is an update and a review. So I think I support the move to site plan review in general, but maybe to wait to actually insert it until the next phase.
Yeah, but the other changes that we were just talking about, those ones would be to clean it up, to make it internally consistent with policies.
Yeah, and that's
Those
not
other
a policy
things. And then
change.
the administrative procedure piece, which is something that we're taking out of the entire zoning bylaw, that will also be eliminated. And there will be a separate, actually, rules and regulations piece
No, and I
that will
think
be
that's
forthcoming,
smart
just so you know.
and,
Okay.
and wise.
But yeah, but the conversation, I'm happy to table this for a later point, and we can come back to it about what would be the flag for site plan review, administrative
Well,
fee, and that kind of thing.
that was a separate question for me, which is what's an example of a kind of project that in other communities would trigger the review versus approval process?
I mean, site plan review versus a special permit,
Yeah.
ADR. That's the question.
Because I mean, it seems like all of the projects that have come up since I've been here are clearly things that needed to go through the ADR process. So I'm not sure I understand what kind of project might come up that doesn't reach that threshold.
Well, it could be something like the, now I'm forgetting the number of the property on Mass Ave, Noonan's property. 245, something like that.
It's even.
254.
It might be
No, we can't
246.
It's 246.
It's
It's in
246.
the, anyway, the three family.
The three condos.
The three condos.
Noonan was the developer.
Oh, Capital Square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would just be an internal.
Well, okay, so we would say, here are the design guidelines, the design criteria that must be met.
Right.
And they're removing a structure, which was like a one-story,
Yep.
little structure, and putting in a triple decker essentially. That would meet specific design criteria and could be reviewed internally. We would review the landscaping, we would review any lighting, the other issues, unless they were looking for some sort of relief of some kind, which then should come to the board. That's the kind of project that actually I don't know that necessarily, that could potentially, I realize it's on Mass Ave,
Right.
but
I think that's a good thing.
I think that's a good
If there's
example of
if there's
something that
nothing-
may not need the board.
If they're not asking for relief and they're following all the requirements, then
But think about,
It would sure speed up the EDR process.
Well,
let's
yeah.
speed it up for the developer's process, but think about the changes that were put in when it first came in front of us.
Well, that's the
And then
thing.
it came back 6 months later
But
and said,
that-
hey, we need to change.
Because
That's part of having better, so that relates to kind of a separate point, which is something that is a substantive change that will be discussed at another time, which is like sort of better, improved design criteria for residential, not just commercial and industrial, which is what those sign or design sort of review deals with. It deals with more commercial and industrial properties, doesn't really address residential as well. So if we went into more of a residential design guide, that would help us to internally be able to look at some of these developments and again, I'm making a recommendation and it's sounds like it's not for tonight anyway, but it's an example of something that we could
it's a good
think about.
discussion. It's an important discussion.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you want to kind of go back and look at the history of the whole thing, say, okay,
Right.
this is a city of gas stations and repair shops.
Don't forget pizza places and hair salons.
No, it was just gas stations. And they wanted the city, they wanted the ARB to help redevelop
Yeah.
the key corridors, Mass Ave, Broadway, and then they threw in projects that got a little big that
Right.
maybe would have a bigger impact.
Mhm.
So there was a mandate from the town as of the town meeting
Mhm.
to establish these special permit requirements.
That's right.
So we gotta make sure that, isn't there another overhaul that's happening based on the mixed use that's come in that, like today, could be decisions that ought to be made maybe in an EDR or a special permit process because they affect so strongly those corridors. I'm just bringing that up because I love the idea that we could simplify and particularly iron out a lot of the site plan issues. But I wonder how is there a way that you could come in and say there's a review of the overall appropriateness, look, fit, effect on the neighborhood, those EDR items?
Yeah, and then come to the board.
Right, well, yeah, I'm just asking.
Something like that. You
Yeah.
could do that way. There's two different ways to do it. I mean, it could be site plan approval that happens administratively, or it could be a review internally, and then it comes to the board. I mean, that is technically what we're doing with the report, but we could do it in a slightly different way with
Right.
those reports, so that much of the work has been done, but is in compliance with specific design criteria. And that's another problem, I think, with some of the
That's a hybrid
EDR.
kind of
You
thing.
could speed the process up so they don't have to wait another month or something to get another, because it's much easier access to you guys.
Right.
So can administrative review provide enough of a safeguard against, say, a scenario where, we make that possible, developers start doing those smaller projects
Mhm.
faster, doing the administrative review process, but then the developers kind of realize, hey, we can really do stuff with this, and like big swaths of corridors start getting redeveloped using the administrative process, and while each individual project may not have an enormous impact on the character of the area, if a lot of it happens, then that could have a very significant impact.
Mhm.
So how do you manage that to make sure that the administrative process has adequate safeguards against kind of small-scale projects that wreak large-scale changes
Mhm.
in an area?
I guess it would depend on what we're specifically talking about, or how many of those smaller scale developments would realistically happen, and in what location.
Yeah.
I mean, I think another facet that this is my observation of the year-plus time I've been around, is one part of EDR that is particularly challenging every time we go through it is the neighborhood context piece. We really struggle with that part. We're looking at the individual property a lot, but it's not that we can't, but I think that we need to have a better way to think about neighborhoods and think about all of the aspects of the neighborhood. Like, for example, one issue that was raised tonight was the historic nature of the two families on Schuler Court. I'm gonna call it that because I feel like it. But the reality is, it's also surrounded by like a high residential zone, R6, and then other business districts. That's only 3 buildings. I mean, yes, and the high school is also an historic property, by the way. So, I mean, I understand that they're not in a historic district. They are on the historic inventory, by the way. I checked, just in case I was worried about that suddenly, those 3 properties.
They should provide an elevation that puts those in
But
context.
we need more, that context, I think, is often missing from this process, and is something that we could also kind of think about for design purposes.
Yeah.
So, like, what are we trying to have them speak to? Which part of that, which road? Was it you liked Mass Ave, she liked Schuler, but there were other things that were coming into play. So I think that's all important parts of the process that have to be handled in a review or internally.
That was my question.
Yeah, that's where that would happen.
So you could take more of a role in steering them in an appropriate direction.
Right.
Good.
But with appropriate design criteria that we could actually follow. I don't think right now the EDR gives enough in terms of that criteria.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of that.
So that's EDR. So it sounds like continue down the direction we've been heading with the modifications similar to the ones that we've already been making, with some minor adjustments. And the rest of it we'll hold off for more substantive changes in the future.
Okay.
All right, signs. Well,
Did I take the
this
mustache
town
off?
likes signs. So we've got signs in the zoning bylaw. You may or may not know, we have signs in the town bylaw in Title 5, Article 1, Title 3, Section 4. There's a lot of information about how signs should be regulated, and a lot of it is in conflict, and there's not a clear process. It just essentially needs a complete overhaul. So I've been having some conversations with both RKG, Recodification Working Group, and then separately with Town Council, who has also been somewhat participating in the recodification process. And one thought we were having is to remove the signs section completely from the zoning bylaw and put it into an improved town bylaw around signs. There are other communities that have that kind of situation. Concord is one of them. There's some benefits to doing it that way. It kind of goes back to this issue of an administrative review, and would definitely improve our capabilities of doing an administrative review. Right now we have some serious conflicts with both just what the directives are within the sign bylaw and all of the problems with it are noted here. I don't want to go into it in great detail, but a lot of things need to be changed. We could still do the sign review based upon district, but as you may also know, one of the other potential substantive, I have a problem with this word, changes that we're talking about is potentially consolidating the use districts, which would include business districts. So that might help, again, if we did that, then we also improve the sign bylaw, that might all kind of work hand in hand. But I guess I need, again, the direction from you guys.
What do the
to
neighboring towns do? I've gone through sign review, and it was not a town bylaw that I had to address.
Yeah.
I've never done that before.
What was it? It was zoning?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's in Arlington, it's not clear why it's in multiple locations, and we have various directives about what you're supposed to do in the process. We have a process that we have been following, that I've continued to follow. I've gone back into all of the files to get a sense of how previous staff have handled those kinds of reviews, and
I definitely would.
just feel that we need some
Should have one
areas of
place.
improvement. Yes.
Yeah, but I just don't know which one place is best suited for it. I'm just saying that places I've never gone to town bylaws
So
for that.
you would go to, technically you would go to the Planning and Community Development Office. You would
Correct.
start there,
Mhm.
and then they would use a bylaw as part of their review process, whether it's the zoning bylaw or they could use a town bylaw.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily that part matters. It might then mean, though, that the board has less review over all signs, but only reviews signs with significant changes, which is somewhat what you do now.
So I think I'm happy to defer to you and to town council
Okay.
as to where it goes.
Okay.
We can obviously decide, we can have a conversation once that decision is made where that goes, but despite what I said about EDR, I think this is an appropriate time to make this change because the policy of signs isn't changing.
Right.
This still
No.
fits in the mission of the zoning recodification working group to clarify whether it's the zoning bylaw or the town bylaw, but to clarify the sign issue and to make it easier to move forward with, along with a certain set of design guidelines that will answer many of the questions that we often ask as far as lighting, size, color, etc.
That's right.
And if I think the way it works is they would come to you for approval. You would either say yes or no. If it were denied, they would have the right to file an appeal. But would that appeal come to us, or would they go directly to a legal action?
They would probably go to inspectional services.
Okay.
I would think that would be the next phase in the process.
Okay.
And then maybe if they weren't satisfied with those answers, then it would go through a different process.
Okay. I think I'd be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
well, and I'm continuing
I'm
to
all
explore
voice.
this with town council. I just kind of, again, wanted to test
Yeah,
your
I know-
appetite for moving in one direction
know
or the other.
2 or 3 years ago, Andy may remember this as well, your predecessor tried to take in some sign review under administrative control. We
Yeah.
allowed it then,
Yeah,
and then you came on and it came back up.
Yeah.
So,
They-
Laura,
they-
you remember?
we were denied.
Did that?
Well, we do a lot of
No, there's
sign
a lot.
review in our
Yeah.
office
Yeah.
now. Ally Carter's been doing it, the
Okay.
economic development coordinator.
So let's, I think, I'm okay with heading down that road to clarify it and to have something in place for either or when the time comes. That's okay.
Does Concord have a sign guideline?
They have yes, they have design guidelines. This is actually their sign bylaw. I brought one copy of it that you're more than welcome to take a look at.
As long as you have a design guideline,
Yeah, that's
then you.
kind of the big thing
Yeah.
is we need to, well, so, okay, there's some very confusing design criteria that's embedded into the zoning bylaw. And then there's also,
Yeah.
what's that?
In our bylaw.
In our
Yeah.
bylaw, in our zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
And then there's also design criteria in the town bylaw based upon historic districts. So I think some melding of things needs to kind of happen.
You
That's
guys
what
have done a
we're
lot of it.
proposing.
I'd like to hear your strong recommendation on it. I remember the time we were trying to put it firmly in your hands. And
Yeah.
it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
But we got rejected on that. That just,
by,
well, it was a combination of trying to have a guideline that said what we wanted, and then the idea that that was too much control somehow, that it would be done administratively, but I'm in favor of it.
I would need to understand a little more, but I can ask around and.
Sign
know a little more.
sense was one of the things, that was a guideline that was put out, and
Yep.
then we were trying to
That's
figure out
right.
a way to have a guideline that then you could administer.
Mhm.
And
I
then
think that
when-
was, I
and then
think that
when
was
you did-
something that just kind of lost steam.
It lost
Oh,
steam,
right.
and then it was overtaken by well, now you're back into it, which is
Oh.
good.
All right, yeah, I'm into it.
But you're into it with the wind
gonna-
behind your back because of the, the
Yeah.
I didn't
master
know about
plan.
that.
Yeah, I think now's the
I
time
see,
to go
gotcha.
ahead and do that. That's okay.
Okay.
So, anything else on,
That was it.
On
No,
that.
those were the two main things, so I appreciate the feedback and the questions and the
not that I'm
direction.
rushing to get out of
No,
here,
no,
but I'm
you've got minutes.
rushing to get out of here. Any other
Unless there's
questions for
any
Jenny on
questions.
the zoning? All right, approval of minutes from May
I didn't
15th.
see minutes.
I couldn't read it.
Oh, do you need a
Yeah, I
copy?
didn't have a chance to look at them either.
Did we get them?
They didn't
you-
come in the packet, they
Oh.
were online. I think we're still getting used to Novus.
Oh, yeah,
like that.
we're putting, basically the only things that
No,
you're
it's
gonna
fine,
get.
because we asked for
Oh,
them to
that's
not be in the
right.
package.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah, I was
fine.
gonna say, is that,
I didn't know how to
Yeah,
get them.
you're still good with that?
I'm not getting, I still need to get used to clicking through.
Yeah, I think we all
Okay,
do.
all
So
right.
why don't we table
Then
that
why
to
don't you wait? Okay, that's fine.
2 weeks from tonight?
But you're still okay with this, the way we're moving with things,
Mhm.
because you're
Yeah.
just going to get hard copies of plans.
That's great.
So like the
Yeah,
next
no, that
meeting.
makes
This
sense.
package is good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was
next
just
is-
us getting used to.
Next meeting,
I have a password, but I don't know how
Laura.
to click through.
No, no, you don't need a password.
do there, will there
Just
be
on the town
updated
website.
plans for 483 Center
Under
Street?
what?
Maybe you just.
Yes, there will be
Oh,
new
well, that's
plans.
good.
Which
Okay.
one's that?
So
I
we
don't
can-
have them in, I'm getting them
Can we
Wednesday.
discard the old ones?
Unless you want to compare them. Why don't you just wait till after the.
All right,
Which
they're still
project
sitting on
is
the
that?
floor of my office. The other ones, it's fine.
Yeah.
Which project was
You
that?
go to the.
483
483
Summer
Summer
Street,
Street.
it's from February, it's been a while.
There's an.
Was that
that's
the-
minutes.
Mixed
Oh, how do you
use.
get to,
Mixed
ARB is within the main town
Yeah, it's
website?
Near
under-
like another
yeah,
former
it's
under
garage
governance? Okay.
building
Yeah,
next to an
Mixed
apartment
use
building.
usually.
Oh, okay, I know, okay,
And then
that
you go
guy, he
there.
was very
Then-
stubborn
then there's
and
the
didn't want to
agendas
do
and
it.
minutes.
So you don't need to put a password in for your email?
This is public.
All right,
This
so
is
I
not
think,
email. This
I think we
is-
can
this
take a
is on the
motion to
website.
adjourn.
And then this is just a
Adjourn.
list
How do you
of.
get
Motion
to
adjourned?
Did you get it?
All-
Oh,
That's
that,
different.
I think you have to.
I think
do
Second.
this, Laura.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.